So I'll start off with something basic. So you've shared, alhamdulillah, some very important points around someone taking responsibility in prioritizing the conversations they concern themselves with. So focusing
Yeah.
on the also main points instead of going into things which are secondary or tertiary. At the same time, would you agree that there is an importance for a layperson or someone who's just starting out in their studies to seek guidance or mentorship from someone who's more experienced in knowledge? And I think a lot of the anxiety and the agitation comes around when there's a culture on social media around people saying, don't listen to such and such person, or this person has made such a mistake. How do you navigate that? How do you navigate knowing that there's an importance in seeking mentorship, but not being really sure about, because you might not feel comfortable discerning what is authentic or not authentic. That's the language that's used, isn't it? So how should a young person or a lay person or someone who's just starting out in his studies navigate this problem of choosing where he learns the religion?
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. I mean, first of all, you know, there's no doubt that human effort and human ijtihad comes into play here. You know, we can't have a list of people and say, right, these guys are trustworthy teachers and these guys are not trustworthy. So definitely there'll be an element of thinking, it'll be an element of consideration, research, you know, do your homework, you know, look a person up. The point is, generally speaking, you know, finding a teacher does not mean finding someone who's perfect. It just means someone who is pious in their religion, and this is a very important condition, because piety and honesty and sincerity means that Allah Ta'ala will grant them guidance and success to do what's right and to say what's right. And secondly, a person who is who has the same principles that the basic Muslim understands. Someone who respects the Quran, someone who respects the Sunnah of the Prophet. Okay? If someone comes along, for example, and you want to take him as a mentor, as a teacher, you want to benefit from his classes and lectures, and he's turning around and saying that, you know, there's no such thing as hadith, there's no such thing as Sunnah, you know, we only need the Quran, then immediately even the basic Muslim will realize that, hold on, I'm pretty sure that you know, the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ are things which there's no scope for discussing. Okay. Also, you know, looking around and asking other people of expertise. You know, asking other people of expertise and other trustworthy people. You know, do you think what do you know anything about this teacher? Do you think it's worth attending? This is one of the most common questions I get in my messages. Do you think I should join these classes? Do you think I should join this class? Do you think I should join that? And generally my answers are, yeah, yes, yeah, unless I know for sure that this person is very problematic. And that's, you know, not usually the case. It's not usually the case. Then the answer is yes. We don't have to go into too much detail about his exact views on, you know, intricate issues and things like that. This is not appropriate. You know, we have some people who are really extreme and they harm themselves and other people when it comes to cutting off the path of benefit from them. قطع الطريق, cutting off the path of benefit just because of minor, you know, disagreements. And so that's something which shouldn't put a person off. Also, you know, this is the journey of knowledge. You learn. I don't, you know, I don't know how many teachers I've spent time studying with. I don't agree with everything they say. This idea that, you know, when you study with someone, he has to, you know, teach you everything in the most perfect way and correctly. No. You know, when you have a teacher, when you have a guide, like I said, if he's a person of character, a person of religion, deen, iman, taqwa, and has essential knowledge, and has good knowledge, and has good character, that's more than sufficient. That's beneficial. You can benefit so much from that person. As you study, as you develop, you'll then make a decision afterwards, inshallah, and Allah will guide you to knowing whether some of what he said was right, some of what he said wasn't right. You know, these are just general guidelines. Okay, so to summarize this answer, the general guidelines here are looking for a person's iman and ikhlas and taqwa. And yes, these are internal things, but there are outward things there are outward signs which give you an idea of a person's sincerity and ikhlas and good akhlaq. And secondly, a person should have knowledge, either because you know that they have spent 10, 15, 20 years working hard to study, either because that you see other scholars and students of knowledge respecting them and referring back to them and advising people to benefit from them. These are all indicators, to help you know the person who's competent to teach and to be taken as a mentor. And then after you've done that, I would say don't pay too much attention to people's criticisms. Okay, this guy said this guy said that, he made a mistake here, he's got mistakes in this, he's got mistakes in that. Don't pay too much attention to these things. Okay, otherwise we'll be running around. No one is free from being criticized. And as well as the iman and the taqwa and the knowledge of the teacher, we ourselves have to have iman and taqwa and ikhlas and ask Allah to guide us to the best path when it comes to seeking knowledge. Because at the end of the day, this is a human effort to choose the best teacher, to choose the right place to study. This is a human effort. Just, be sincere with Allah, ask Allah to guide you and get stuck into it instead of worrying too much about and hesitating too much about this topic. No.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. That's very, very helpful. Maybe as a follow-up question, so you mentioned about how some people have this mindset of qat'u tariq, so they cut people off, they say don't listen to such and such a person at all. Would you agree that this is a manifestation, amongst other things, of having sort of a narrow mindset? And if you do agree, what kind of practical points or tips would you give to a young person on how to develop open-mindedness, or how to develop open-mindedness in general, whilst also staying true to a normative Islam, or staying true to the general principles or the principles we can't budge on? So how can one practically develop an open-mindedness, a thorough reading of how this
Definitely the open-mindedness, there are some points that we can keep in mind that help us become open-minded. But at the same time, the thing which truly makes a person more open-minded is varied studies. Okay, studying with a variety of teachers is the most effective thing to help you have an open mind and be more open to accepting other Muslims. And this is why the famous principle that the scholars say is man kathura ilmuhu qalla inkaruhu. Whoever's knowledge increases, his criticism of other people decreases. Picture yourself. You've spent your whole life studying in one place with one teacher, or with 2 or 3 teachers who have exactly the same views on everything, exactly the same mindset. You are not going to be able to comprehend that there is something such as truth outside of what you've learned. And this is the way, this is the nature of lack of knowledge. This is the nature of lack of knowledge. Young people, when they've always been taught something, they can't comprehend that something else is the truth. This is what my teacher said this. My parents said this. This is it. I don't believe what you're saying. Because they can't comprehend that something else is right. And so when you've restricted yourself to one teacher, to some teachers, your whole life, to just one view your whole life, don't be surprised, when you find yourself criticizing so many things. And sometimes people criticize things which are part of the Sunnah in Islam and accepted in Islam without hesitation, by consensus, sometimes by scholarly consensus, but because they've been brought up to think that this is wrong, they just find it difficult to accept. I remember in a class once, someone asked me, did the Prophet ﷺ pray in his shoes? So I said yes. And Anas ibn Malik was asked the same question, the hadith reported by Al-Bukhari. He says, did the Prophet ﷺ pray in his shoes? And Anas said yes. So I said it in class, and someone said, no, I don't believe that. So I don't believe that. Even though there's no difference of opinion between scholars that praying in your shoes is permissible, and that this hadith is an authentic hadith, that the Prophet ﷺ prayed in his shoes. But his whole life he's been brought up to think that, no, how can you pray in your shoes? That's disrespectful. Yeah, and in another lesson the other day, yesterday, I think someone asked me about making wudu if a dog licks you. And I said, none of the scholars of Islam say you have to make wudu if a dog licks you. So he said, well, that's weird though, because I've been brought up to... Okay, so imagine even things which are definitely wrong, you'll stick by them sometimes because that's all you've been taught. So, one of the things that I found really beneficial for myself is to benefit from different teachers. You know, I have sometimes studied with some mashayikh who other people said, you know, that's a bit, you know, I'm a bit worried that you've spent some time studying with that teacher. He said this, and wallahi, sometimes I sit in the lesson with this sheikh, and it's almost like someone's punching me in the back. One teacher was, you know, he was a bit critical of some of the Hanbali scholars, like Abdullah ibn Ahmad and Ibn Taymiyyah. And being someone who most of his fiqh studies are Hanbali, I was in the class and I was, you know, taking shots from the person without saying a word. And that's fine, because I benefited so many other things. When he spoke about Ibn Taymiyyah, you know, in a way which I didn't really like, when he spoke about Abdullah ibn Ahmad and others in a way which I didn't really like, I ignored that stuff. It's not going to kill me. You know, I benefited from him in other elements of hadith and Arabic language and things like that, and move on. And so, you know, طيب, this story has now made me forget what.